We talk about export controls every day in Washington. You're on the other end of this, of course, looking at Nvidia's balance sheet and forecast, trying to figure out how to factor this in. How significant is this to crack back into the Chinese market?
Look, there's one chip in the world fueling the AI revolution, and that's Nvidia. And you really need to give them access to the China market. I think that's the understanding that's been well understood now in the Beltway. It's important because the reality is we're talking about $20 billion a year. And if they don't allow them to sell into China, that just gives Huawei and China competition the ability to narrow the gap. And that's what Jensen continues to talk. And I think that message is definitely being heard.
Is it possible for a Dan Ives to do channel checks when it comes to China? Do we know that there are buyers on the other end?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously we spend a lot of time in Asia, in China. Look, they want NVIDIA chips. The reality is, would you want Peter Luger's steak or would you want White Castle? And the reality is they want the one chip in the world fueling the AI revolution. And that guy's wearing a black leather jacket, and his name is Jensen. And look, there's competition. Huawei and others, they're narrowing the gap. But big tech in China, there's one chip they want. It's NVIDIA.
Well, it's really interesting because Michael Burry, I think, is ready to meet you at White Castle. He was out once again with a knock on NVIDIA today, suggesting that energy efficiencies will make their highest power chips less useful in the immediate term. So as we throw all these data centers back together with an eye on Broadcom and its TPUs, is there some truth to this?
Look, I mean, our last Asia trip, if I go back a month ago, demand to supply is 12-1 for NVIDIA chips. So look, it's going to continue to be a prove me in terms of the AI revolution, but I mean, we still believe this is early days. You're talking about $3 to $4 trillion that's going to be spent next few years. There's others. Look, we're bullish on Google, bullish on AMD. Others are going to get into this AI arms race on the chip side. But right now, there's one chip at the top of that mountain, and it's NVIDIA's world, and everyone else is paying rent.
It's NVIDIA's world. Is this stock then, in your view, with the earnings growth, revenue growth that we've seen in the most recent forecast, is this stock cheaper than it was a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, like 250 to 275 is where I see it end of 2026. It's a cheap stock. And you know, I think it's one where investors sometimes, you know, there's a lot of noise in this, and you got to separate out what demand ultimately looks like. And we're in the third inning of a 9-inning game in terms of AI revolution. And it's not just about NVIDIA, it's about Microsoft. It's about Google. It's about Palantir. It's the, you know, the infrastructure, Nebius and others, GE Vernova. I mean, this is where it's all heading. You know, even when you look at things like nuclear, right, in terms of from a perspective, from an energy, it's just starting.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned energy because I talked about this today with Joseph Mycutt at CSIS, and he talks about energy with relation to AI. And we talked about this deal today, but also just the rampant growth in data center construction in this country and the potential for us to keep bumping into the ceiling, the capacity ceiling, when it comes to things like water and, yes, energy. Dan, here's what he said.
I think it's a little bit like a tale of two cities. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Wow.
Looking back at 2025, it's been a remarkable year of continued acceleration. When we think about the build out that we expect to see over the next 5 years, that's going to continue to happen. All of the challenges that you raise, power availability, water use, a general sense that society's not getting the benefits of the data center build out, those are going to almost probably get worse.
Could get worse, Dan Ives. When you throw the NIMBY log on the fire, you consider the capacity constraints when it comes to cooling, yes, water, and also energy, whether or not we're all going to have a small nuclear reactor in our backyard at some point. What kind of volatility do investors need to brace for, knowing that this can't grow in a straight line?
Yeah, no, look, but I think for the first time in 30 years, the U.S. is ahead of China when it comes to technology. Energy is obviously the constraint. You saw the TAE nuclear deal. You see what's happening, you know, in terms of what we see across all types of energy, not just nuclear, solar, and grid. But I think continuing nuclear is going to be the play. Look what GE Vernova is trying to do in terms of stopgap. Look, the reality is that is going to be the focus to make sure in this AI revolution that the U.S. is ahead. And I believe this is going to be a time of innovation. But no doubt, the biggest constraint in the AI revolution is energy.
Yep. Alphabet today agreeing to buy clean energy developer Intersect Power. I know that's not a big priority for the administration right now, Dan, but this is a $5 billion deal. To what extent will clean energy provide the next leg?
I think it's all about clean energy. I mean, we've talked about it. This is just the start of big tech owning more and more energy, and they're going to build it out vertically. I mean, that's the arms race that's playing out. You'll see OpenAI, you'll see other tech players, Microsoft and others, because that is where we're going in terms of from an energy perspective. And I continue to think you're going to see more deals like this. We've talked about nuclear and others. That's where I continue to think it heads.
Really interesting. Dan, I've got to ask you about the Tesla news while you're with us. Headlines on the terminal that Tesla engineers warned Elon Musk about the door handles, the electronic door handles, pushing him to consider making them purely mechanical for the Model 3 sedan in the name of safety. He pushed back because he valued the simplicity of push-button controls. How much of a liability is the story for the company?
I mean, look, in my view, Tesla, you have 10 million vehicles that'll be on the road by next year in terms of made. And I think the success speaks for itself. Look, I'm not saying that there's not issues, and these are all things that are very important, to sort of, understand and to make sure it's better and better. But I think right now for Tesla and for Musk, I mean, also the future is really about autonomous and robotics. And I think that's what investors are all focused on. And this is going to be a battleground stock. It will continue to be, but like we've talked about, we think $3 trillion in a bull case where we could see this, given the autonomous chapter is now here.
Fascinating, as always. With regard to autonomous, I've only got a minute left. Dan, what's the next stop on the road for Tesla? Most people have only seen reports of robotic cars, whether it's Waymo or Tesla's version on this. When does this go mainstream?
Oh, I think 2026. I mean, we've been cars in Austin, everything they're building out, the geofence area. I think you're going to have 30 cities with robotaxi, 2026.
Wow.
And this is going to be, I think, probably the most important year ever for Tesla, given true autonomous and robotaxis. And I think you're going to see more and more that are, in a robotaxi in the next year.
You at the point where you prefer a driverless car, Dan Ives?
I do. Look, I do. I mean, the point is that I think it's one. I've been in Waymos. I've been in robotaxis. I'm a big fan of full self-driving on Tesla.
I love that.
I think that's where this. If you have an 8-year-old today, they're not going to need a driver's license when they're 16.
Yeah. Incredible. I like that idea.